Hello guys and welcome to What If Deku today with What If Deku Had a Black Dragon Quirk? Chapter 1, Awakening. Not all men are created equal. That lesson holds even more meaning now as people are born with unique and sometimes powerful superhuman abilities, called quirks, and a young boy named Izuku Midoriya learned that lesson at the young age of 4. Recently Izuku's best friend Katsuki Bakugo had developed a powerful quirk that allowed him to create explosions from his palms. After a day or two of the kindergarten class fawning over Katsuki's heroic quirk, both the young kids and the teacher had realized that almost all of the kids had a quirk, and now the only person in their class who hadn't developed a quirk yet was Izuku. Some of the other kindergartners in his class started to pick on the greenette because of the fact, saying he's quirkless. But fortunately for him Bakugo had his back and had always stuck up for his best friend, usually by scarring the bullies off. But it all changed for Izuku on the bright sunny morning of his 4th birthday. The day before when he went to bed Izuku told his mother, Inko, that his whole body felt very sore and tired. Inko looked at her son with worry before having him take some children's pain medication and sent him off to bed, where the green-haired mother hadn't heard a word from him throughout the entire night. Then the morning sun arrived, and little Izuku was feeling different from how he was the night before, but the boy was too tired to notice it right away. He sluggishly hopped out of his All Might-themed bed and tiredly walked to the bathroom to brush his teeth. As the now 4-year-old was waking up, he went to pull out the step stool to reach the sink, but stopped when he saw that his tops of his forearms were now covered in dark black scales that jutted out like spikes on a hedgehog or thorny devil, while the underside of his forearms and hands were covered in an equally black but smooth scales like the ones on a snake, and the ends of his fingertips now ended in sharp claws. The scales on his forearms had stopped forming at the elbows, leaving the rest of his arms as regular skin, making it look like he was wearing spiky black forearm guards. The scales were also the same way with his legs too. The boy gasped in excitement as he quickly set up the stool so he could get a good look at himself in the bathroom mirror. He lifted his little body up and gasped in delight as he saw his reflection. The biggest thing he noticed was 2 large, black dragon-like wings that now were on his back. He moved, stretched, and tested out his new appendages with pure delight. Izuku then noticed that on top of the new wings, he felt another new weight on his body, as he looked behind him and saw that he also had a long black tail as well. Izuku squealed in delight as he felt the newly acquired tail wag behind him like he was an excited puppy. Izuku looked back at the mirror to see that on the top of his head in his curly green locks, 2 large, black crest-like horns had formed on his head. Izuku couldn't believe that his quirk would be so cool, before excitedly rushing out of the bathroom, screaming for his mother, "Mommy! Mommy, wake up! I got my quirk! Look, look! I look like Daddy!" Inko heard her son's cries faintly as she began to wake up from her slumber. "Just wait, Zuzu, Mommy will. Yawns be up in a minute," Inko said tiredly as she stood up out of bed and stretched. She rubbed her eyes awake before looking down at her beloved son. "Now then Zuzu, what was it you wanted to show me dash?" Inko stopped mid-sentence, now fully awake, and stared at her beloved son's new features before she beamed joyously at her baby boy. Tear welled up in her eyes as she excitedly picked up the smaller greenette and happily scooped him up and spun him around in her arms. "Izuku! This is incredible! Oh, Hisashi's going to be so happy. You look so much like your daddy now Zuzu." The now emotional mother cried out with tears of joy as she stopped excited spinning the now giggling boy around, before pulling her son into a hug. Later on, the 2 greenettes went to get Izuku's quirk registered, Izuku happily taking his All Might figure with him. "So what will you call your new quirk?" the old doctor asked. After about a minute or two of thinking, Izuku looked up at him with a small, delighted smile on his face. "I want to call it, oh. How about Black Dragon? Mister, what else do you think my quirk can do? Can I breath fire, or shoot lightning bolts? Or maybe even both?" Izuku excitedly said as he bounced in his chair. "Sorry kid, but we ran some tests, and besides having a new unknown organ in your body, you've got no additional abilities besides what the new physical parts of your quirk grant. The organ isn't linked to your throat, so it isn't fire breath. My guess is it's like an appendix, an unused extra organ. It's best you give up on being a hero now, as there is little chance you'll make it without any added strength or elemental control most quirks like yours usually give people. The doctor emotionlessly stated to the young greenette, not caring one bit for the feelings of the boy in front of him. Izuku's world shattered upon hearing that, as he dropped his All Might figurine on the ground from how upset he was at the news. After a long, but quiet car ride back home, Inko saw her son watching the same All Might video he loved so much with tears streaming down his freckled cheeks. Mommy, see, can I be a hero like him? Izuku sobbed out, pointing at the number one hero's smiling face. Inko tried her best not to also tear up at seeing her son like this, but couldn't hold back her own tears as she went over to comfort her son. Inko pulled the young boy into a hug while crying. She was going to apologize before she stopped and realized that saying she's sorry would be the last thing her baby would have wanted to hear in that moment, so she steeled herself and took a deep breath before looking Izuku in the eyes. Izuku, I don't want you to believe that mean old doctor. You'll be a fantastic hero. I just know it. She said truthfully and lovingly, making Izuku smile once more, even though deep down, Izuku was still hurt by the doctor's words but was glad his mother still supported his dream. When Izuku went back to school, things went from bad to worse, as Tsubasa, whose grandfather was Izuku's quirk doctor, had told the entire grade, which then spread to the whole school, about Izuku's new but supposedly defective quirk. His classmates mocked and sneered at him, saying mean things like, "Look at Midoriya, he broke his own quirk. Don't have him get near me. I don't want him to break my quirk too. He looks kinda like a villain now. I guess he can't be a hero anymore with how scary he looks." The bullies then began to use the nickname Katsuki accidentally gave him a couple days ago against him as they all continued to laugh at his misfortune. He's as good as quirkless with a broken quirk like that. Yeah. He just a stupid Deku now. I guess we'll just have to call him that from now on. It fits him perfectly. All of the taunts and harsh comments made him feel like he wanted to curl up into a ball and cry as he sat on the floor, as his tail subconsciously curled around his feet and his wings draped themselves around him, as he now wanted to just hide away from the bullies. Izuku started to cry silently to himself, until he felt a comforting hand ruffle his hair. He wiped the tears from his eyes and turned around to see Bakugo standing beside him, the blonde-haired boy looking down at the smaller greenette, and smirked before first pumping the air. "We are going to prove them wrong, Deku. We're going to be hero partners together, remember. We're going to be the best of the best and no one will say otherwise. We will be better than even All Might, so you shouldn't care about what those stupid extras think about you, Deku. 'Cause it just gives us one more reason to prove them wrong, right?" Bakugo asked, extending a hand out to Izuku with a genuine smile on his usually scowling face. Izuku stared back at Katsuki and smiled brightly at the blonde and nodded before taking the boy's hand, letting Katsuki help him up. "Thanks, Kaken," Izuku said back to the blonde as he was more than happy that his best friend would still be willing to stay by his side. And Bakugo was right, Izuku would go on to become a hero alongside him, but he would become the greatest hero ever known. This is the story of Izuku Midoriya and his unique power, the power of the blazing black avatar dragon, Elatrian. Chapter 2, A Chance Meeting with All Might. Izuku is now 14 years old and he and Bakugo are now in their last year of junior high. Both of them were working extremely hard on making it into UA, as they both had near-perfect attendance, excelled at and were usually at the top of their classes, and had been working out together since they turned 8. But even though the Bakugos and his mother supported Izuku's dream, everyone else he knew laughed at and judged him for it. His classmates always sneered and glared at him. New people saw his slightly scary appearance as being unfit for hero work and more suited for a future villain. His teachers always would put up a cheery front when he was nearby or in class, but once they were, or thought they were completely alone, would shudder in disgust and grimace to themselves at the mere thought of being nice to such a villainous and useless child. Izuku had the term villain be thrown around at him a lot when his bullies talked down to him or cornered him without his, in their own words, explosive guard dog around to stop them. He was just extremely glad that Kaken had stayed by his side, even with his defective quirk. His best friend seemed gruff and intimidating to most other people, but when he was around Izuku he was quite kind and supportive of the Greenette's dreams, even though he still had an extremely foul mouth. Izuku was currently on his way to school when he saw a battle between a hero and villain happen nearby. He took out his hero notebook and began to write down and observe the fight between the criminal and Kamui Woods. His eyes twinkled in excitement as the wooden hero was about to subdue the villain with his lacquered chain prison technique before he was interrupted by Mount Lady shouting out, "Canyon Cannon," before kicking the villain and launching them. Izuku vigorously took notes on her quirk, gigantification, as a man nearby saw his notes and asked him if he wanted to be a hero. Izuku immediately replied to the man with a yes before closing his notes and heading off to Aldria Junior High. His homeroom teacher having Izuku's class go over their future careers, but chuckled before he throwing the papers in the air and saying, "Oh what the heck, you all know you want to be heroes." The class erupted into cheers as they showed off their quirks, while Izuku sat quietly in the back. Everything died back down once the teacher stated the school's no-use policy on quirks during school hours. "Hey teach, don't lump me or Deku in with these D-list extras. Out of everyone here, the two of us have the best shot of getting into UA." Bakugo loudly spoke up, causing the class to start chatting about how low UA's acceptance rates are and how if anyone from their school could get in, it would be Bakugo. The teacher confirmed this by bringing up how Katsuki applied for UA. The teacher then looked down and saw another application to the infamous school and smirked before looking over at a certain green-haired student. "Oh, Midoriya, it says here you also applied for UA." The teacher exclaimed in a clearly fake surprised tone of voice, just so the class attention would now be fully on the small, shy greenette. Once the classroom was finished taking in this new information after a few seconds of silence, they all then burst out into a fit of hollering laughter as they all pointed at the greenette, who was slowly sinking into his seat in shame and embarrassment. "Ha! The stupid useless lizard thinks he can get into UA on grades alone. What an idiot. No sane hero teacher would ever let a villain into their school, let alone into UA. Ha! If Deku thinks that he can be a hero with only wings and scales, then he's even more delusional than I thought." As his classmates sneered at him and mocked him, Izuku felt someone put a hand on his shoulder, which he unconsciously flinched away from, fearing the worst, before slowly looking up to see Kaken's ruby eyes gazing down at him. "Don't you listen to those extras, Deku. We're going to be heroes together, and nothing will change that, got it?" The blonde snarled in a tranquil fury, trying to keep himself from exploding in rage at his classmates while trying to comfort his brother from another mother. "Oh okay Kaken, but what if they dash?" Izuku was cut off mid-sentence when Bakugo frowned at him and gave him a disappointed look before pinching Izuku's lips together. Izuku jumped a little at that, giving the blonde a bewildered and shocked look while a slight blush crept onto his freckled cheeks, before crossing his arms and pouting at Bakugo. Bakugo soon let go of Izuku's lips and gave him a stern look, almost as if he was challenging Izuku to finish his self-deprecating sentence, to which the greenette wisely decided to stay quiet. "Deku, don't you dare listen to them. I don't know what's going through that shitty little head of yours, but that garbage stuff those extras spill out of their mouths is not true. You're better than them, Deku, I know it's true. So don't you dare sell yourself short, got it?" Bakugo sighed before ruffling Izuku's hair with a fond smirk, knowing that the gesture always made the greenette smile whenever he was in a bad mood. Izuku giggled at the blonde ruffling his hair, as his mood brightened again. Okay. I got it, Kaken. Thank you for the pep talk. I love you, Nichan." Izuku whispered out the last part as he gave the blonde a quick and short one-armed hug before returning his attention to the teacher as he began to round up his now rowdy class. Bakugo blushed a little and whispered a small, "Love ya too," before he walked back to his desk with a barely noticeable pink tinge now adorning his cheeks. Soon, the final bell rang and everyone began to pack up their stuff. "Hey nerd, I've got a few things I left in my locker I need to get, I'll be right back, got it?" Bakugo said softly, to which Izuku nodded at him, causing Bakugo to fondly smirk at the greenette. Bakugo soon left the room and Izuku was now alone, gathering his things and revising some of the errors and mistakes he made in his hero notes he quickly wrote down during today's villain fight. Suddenly one of his bullies snatched his hero analysis notebook from him with a laugh. "Hey! Give that back!" Izuku cried as he tried to reach for the notebook before getting shoved down by a second bully and loudly hitting his head against one of the metal legs of his desk with a resounding clang, as he fell to the ground. "Ha! What's wrong you stupid little villain? Don't like it when us heroes take away your evil stalker notebook and send it to the police so they can finally throw your stupid ass in jail where worthless, villainous dekus like you belong?" The bully sneered. Izuku knew they would send it to the police. Heck, Izuku's apartment was swatted 3 times in his life after some of his bullies found out his address. Izuku couldn't sleep for hours after those incidents, even though the police profusely apologized once it was revealed the allegations of what was happening in the apartment were fake ones. It didn't take away from the fear of armed men storming his home and forcing him away from his loving mother's arms, or worse, killing her on accident. The bully then chuckled before he used his quirk, a minor quirk that could heat up the temperature emitted from his palms like an electric stove top, to burn the cover of Izuku's notebook. Izuku now trembled on the ground with tears in his eyes as the bullies just laughed at his misfortune. "Hey, guys, I know exactly where Deku belongs." The lead bully sneered before throwing Izuku's notebook into the koi pond below as the faint, distant sound of footsteps could have been heard heading to the doorway. Deku should be sleeping with the fishes, along with his pathetic stalker notes. The lead bully hollered as the rest snickered behind him, having a lot of fun picking on the smaller greenette before them. The lead bully's face then quickly switched from hollering with laughter to being deadly serious as he clutched the greenette's collar and lifted the struggling boy to eye level. He then smirked at Izuku's fear-stricken face before he slid his hand up Izuku's sleeve to firmly grasp the boy's shoulder and used his quirk. Izuku flinched and winced as he struggled fruitlessly in the much taller male's grasp as he felt his shoulder be burnt black, now fearing the eventual handprint-sized burn scar that will be left behind. The bully finally turned his quirk off and removed his hand out from underneath Izuku's uniform, before spitting in the greenette's face, his disgust and disdain for Izuku being shown as clear as day on his own face. "If you don't want to be such a villainous and worthless Deku, why don't you just kill yourself and save everyone the trouble of having to deal with your miserable existence every day? Maybe then Bakugo can become a hero without wasting so much of his time on taking care of your pathetic ass every day." The lead bully spat out, venom laced in his voice before he roughly slammed Izuku onto the floor. Izuku let out a small cry of pain as the group of bullies then calmly walked out of the classroom as if nothing ever even happened, leaving a now shaking and sniffling Izuku behind as he used the packets of tissues in his backpack to clean the bully spit off of his face and throw away in the trash can right on the side of his desk. It was placed there every morning from its original spot by his teacher, which has led to many different things being purposefully thrown at his head. When his teacher saw this happen, he'd only make the offender pick up their missed trash, before they would apologize for the accident by saying they were aiming for the trash can and didn't mean to hit him. Izuku would have believed that he had just got the unlucky seat if he hadn't overheard his teacher say to another teacher that he only places the trash by the only other defective thing in the room in hopes that Izuku would learn where he belongs. The approaching footsteps now turned from a walk into a loud sprint, as Katsuki entered the room only a few moments later. "Izuku! Izuku, are you al-?" Katsuki stopped as he stared down at his injured little brother in rage, but scolded himself for leaving the boy alone. Without saying another word, he ran straight to Izuku and hugged him tight, the boy now clinging onto Katsuki like a lifeline while he silently cried into his surrogate brother's shoulder, as Katsuki whispered reassuring words into his ear while rubbing circles on the boy's back. After a while Izuku was able to calm down enough to head home. Katsuki helped Izuku pack up the rest of his stuff before the two went and grabbed the notebook out of the koi pond. Hey Izuku. Yes Kaken? Remember what I said earlier, okay? I won't pry into what had just occurred back there, since I know you don't like it when I do that sort of thing, but just know that if you ever need someone to vent to or a shoulder to cry on, I'm always here for you little bro. Katsuki said reassuringly as he brought the greenette into a tight one-armed hug. Thanks Kaken, I'll keep that in mind. Izuku said as they broke off from the hug. If you say so. Well Deku, I've got to get going. Dad and the old hag want me to run out and get ingredients for tonight's dinner on my way home from school. Tell Auntie I said hi. See you tomorrow. Katsuki said nonchalantly as he and Izuku went their separate ways. As Izuku walked underneath a bridge, he began to think to himself about what those bullies had said earlier, and began to think, what if they were right? Izuku shook his head and lightly slapped his forehead to stop himself from thinking like that. Don't listen to them Izuku, you know they're wrong. Mom, Auntie Mitsuki, Uncle Maresu, and Kaken would miss you if you did that. You just have to smile and carry on, just like All Might. Izuku thought to himself as he did just that, before the manhole cover burst over and out of it a sludge monster appeared, stopping the once smiling boy in his tracks. Good, a medium-sized invisibility cloak. That oughta keep him from finding me. The monster said as it began to force its way down Izuku's throat. Izuku began to panic as he struggled and clawed at the sludge and tried to flap his wings, trying to get away with no avail. And no. Please. I can't breathe. I don't want to die. Izuku thought before a familiar laugh was heard and a tall blonde man jumped out from the sewers. Have no fear, for I am here. All Might shouted as he smashed the slime villain apart, freeing the greenette. As he fell to the ground, the only two words Izuku was able to say to himself in his head while falling unconscious was, All Might? Izuku soon awoke to someone lightly slapping his cheek when he saw All Might standing right in front of him. Hey All Might. Why you saved me. Thank you so very much. Can you please sign my not dash? The book was already signed by the tall muscular blonde. You already did. Thank you so much. No need to thank me young man, I was just doing my job. And plus. All Might pulled out 2 soda bottles containing the sludge villain. I've captured the villain. Now I must go take this villain to the police station. Goodbye young man. All Might announced boldly as he prepared to jump. Izuku, in a split-second decision, latched onto the man's pants and they launched off into the sky. Wait, I still have something I need to ask Yoichi. All Might looked down in worry and shock. What are you doing you man? You need to let go. All Might said as he tried to have the boy let go. But others will see me fly. And I don't want to get arrested for illegal quirk use. Izuku said in protest and All Might agreed with him, so the number 1 hero soon landed on top of a nearby building. That was incredibly dangerous young man. Why on earth would you do such a reckless thing? Now I must go take this villain to the police. Wait All Might I need to ask you something. I don't have time FO dash. Can someone with a supposedly villainous and defective quirk ever hope to be a hero like you? All my life, all I've ever wanted was to be a hero like you. To save people and help people with a smile and to make the world a better place for the good of everyone. So please tell me, can I ever be a hero like you All Might? Izuku spoke from his heart. All Might listened to the boy tell him his dreams before he realized he was out of time. Shit. He thought smoke was coming from his body, which was unknown to the greenette, before he reverted into his smaller form. Izuku took the apparent silence as that All Might had left, so he decided to open his eyes and what he saw made him scream. In front of him wasn't All Might, but a sicky, skeletal-looking blonde. Who are you? What happened to All Might? My boy, let me explain. I am Almi dash. The blonde then coughed up blood, causing Izuku to scream in worry as he quickly opened up his backpack and quickly searched in it to grab his handkerchief and hand it to the man. Here, take it. You clearly need this if you're coughing up blood, sir. Izuku pleaded as he handed the man the handkerchief in worry, causing All Might to smile and thank the greenette for his generosity. Thank you, my boy, you're too kind. Now you must be wondering about why I'm like this, right? All Might asked, to which Izuku nodded. All Might then told Izuku to never tell anyone about this before he showed the boy his scared chest and explained the story behind it as Izuku listened in horror. I am sorry, All Might, I. No need to apologize, my boy, it's not your fault. Well, about you being a hero with a defective quirk, as you called it. All Might made quotation marks in the air as he said that. I don't think any quirk can be called defective or villainous outright. The person makes the quirk, not the other way around. So yes, my boy, I believe that you can be a hero. It won't be easy and you'll have to work hard, but I believe you can do it. Maybe you won't be a mainline hero, but underground heroes help just as much. Now then, may I ask for your name, young man? All Might asked. It's Izuku M. Midoriya SS, sir. Thank you so much. All Might? Where's the villain? Izuku asked as All Might then checked his back pocket before he then realized and swore aloud in English, shit, as an explosion went off in an alleyway in the distance. Chapter 3, A Sacred Torch. Both Izuku and All Might, in his smaller form, rushed down to the scene of the explosion to find a crowd of people. They looked into the alleyway the crowd formed at and saw the sludge villain in a burning hell's cape, trying to take over someone's body, but neither could quite make out who it was. The hero Backdraft used his water to block off the civilian crowd from entering the scene, as heroes mostly stood on the sidelines, unable to help due to their quirks being unfit for the fight at hand. Even Mount Lady couldn't help, due to her being unable to fit into the narrow alleyway in her giant form. This is all my fault. If I hadn't stopped All Might, then none of this would have happened. Izuku thought to himself. Darn it. How could I have not noticed the villain being missing? And now I'm out of time and can't do anything. Some hero I am. All Might thought to himself as the crowd of people murmured about where All Might was and how the other heroes couldn't do anything with the villain due to him taking a hostage. Then the crowd split apart just enough for the two to see the full scene. Then Izuku saw in the slime villain a familiar head of blonde hair before ruby eyes stared at him filled with fear and anger. At that moment, Izuku ran out as fast as he could, his body moving on his own as heroes called out to him as he rushed into the dangerous scene. Izuku chucked his backpack at the villain's eye, causing them to cry out in pain, before he started to claw Katsuki out of the slime's grasp. He then freed Katsuki's head from the slime, as the blonde gasped for air. Deku. What the fuck are you doing? Kaken. You looked like you needed help, why would you run out here, Deku? My body moved on its own. I couldn't just stand there and watch you die. I can't lose my best friend. I can't lose you, Kaken. Izuku then pulled as hard as he could, freeing Katsuki's left arm and some of his torso when the sludge villain recuperated from the blow to the eye. You're the brat from before. This time I'll make sure you're dead. The sludge villain then took Katsuki's right arm and pointed it at Izuku. The greenette then paled as Katsuki screamed in protest, "No, DKU move now." But it was too late as the sludge villain forcefully activated Katsuki's quirk point blank at Izuku. Izuku instinctively covered his body with his wings and braced for the impact as the explosion engulfed him. Heroes and bystanders stared out in shock as the young boy was seemingly turned to ash. No! Young Midoriya. All Might thought in horror as he felt utterly helpless as he saw the fireball engulf the boy. For the second time in his life, All Might's fight was now personal, as he scowled in his smaller form. The smoke billowed from the spot where Izuku had seemingly once stood, as the villain laughed at his deed, Katsuki looking completely and utterly devastated, thinking he just killed his best friend. The smoke then started to clear, as the crowd of people gasped and All Might breathed out a sigh of relief. The sludge villain looked confused before he looked down and was shell-shocked. Izuku was still standing, as some scales on his horns, forearms, tail and wings glowed a fiery orange for a few seconds before fading back to black. Katsuki, for one of the only times in his life, let tears of joy fall from his face as he smiled. The sludge villain looked ticked off as he roared in fury, lashed out with a tentacle, and shouted out, "Why won't you just stay dead?" Izuku braced for the blow. But it never came, as Izuku opened up his eyes and saw All Might, in his powerful buff form, shielding him from the blow. All Might. Fear not, young man. Thank you for holding the villain off, but let us heroes take it from here. Texas Smash. All Might shouted as he punched the slime villain so hard it changed the weather. The police soon arrived and properly detained the sludge villain while Izuku was scolded by the other pro-heroes and Katsuki was praised for how much he fought. Once they let him go home, Izuku heard someone shout at him from behind. "Oi, Deku." "Why yes, Kaken?" Izuku asked nervously as he braced for his friend to hit him from his stupid decision, but it never came. Instead, Katsuki pulled Izuku into a tight bear hug and shouted out, "You prick, I thought I killed you back there. Don't you dare scare me like that ever again or I'll make sure you'll have a fate worse than death, you bastard." Izuku then felt the blonde let him out of the ribcage crushing hug, before gasping for air and saying jokingly, "Love you too, Kaken," before he was playfully punched in the shoulder. The two then walked in silence before Katsuki asked, "Hey nerd, why were your scales glowing orange back then?" "I don't know, Kaken." "You think it's about your quirk?" "Yup, but I don't know why that happened." "You'll figure it out, you nerdy lizard." "Welp, I'm going to head back to the old hag's place, call me if you need anything else, Deku." "Gotcha. See ya, Kaken." Izuku said cheerily as Katsuki teached before walking forward and rounding the corner to his way home, leaving Izuku standing there alone. Young Midoriya. "I am he dash." All Might said as he came out of the alleyway Izuku was next to, spitting out blood and reverting back to his small form as Izuku jumped a little in shock. "Hey All Might. I'm so sorry for rushing in there." Izuku quickly apologized and bowed repeatedly as he did so, making All Might chuckle. "Nonsense, my boy. It was your heroic action that spurred me to act. Now then, I have a question, what were you thinking when you rushed into that situation?" Nothing, sir. My body moved on its own." "Huh. Exactly. Young Midoriya, over the years, famous heroes have always leaped into action and had reported their bodies move on their own, just like you did today. You show the spirit of a true hero, young Midoriya." "Thank you, All Might. That's why I want you to be my successor." Izuku's mind came to a screeching halt when All Might said that. I am sorry, All Might, your successor." "Yes, my boy, I'm going to tell you the true nature of my quirk. It's called One for All." "One for All?" Izuku repeated in awe. "Yes, my boy. It is a special quirk that can be transferred down from person to person like a sacred torch, with each user growing more powerful than the last. I am currently the 8th holder of One for All, and I want you, young Midoriya, to be the 9th. So young Midoriya, will you be my successor?" Izuku smiled widely and answered with an excited and enthusiastic, "Yes, I will, All Might." "Great. But my boy, in this form, please call me Yagi Tashinori. Now then, meet me at Dagoba Beach tomorrow at 6 a.m. sharp so we can start your training. I'll see you then." All Might said with a smile before walking off. Izuku sat there for a minute before realizing the time and running back home. And thus began his 10 months of hell training with All Might. Chapter 4, Training, Secrets, and a Red Comet. Katsuki woke up very early the morning after the sludge villain incident. He knew it was a good idea to stick around a bit after he was out of Deku's field of view and overheard a specific conversation between the Greenette and the #1 hero himself. He grit his teeth in annoyance, as he knew the nerd was going to keep this whole thing a secret from him until he would see this new aspect of his quirk himself. He quickly got dressed and ready before walking out the door and headed towards Dagobah Beach, making it there just as the morning sun started to rise. He then decided to hide behind the nearest junk pile just out of sight of others. Deku, you better tell me the full story of how you meet All Might once I catch you here. And if All Might is going to have you do what I think you're doing, then you better know that I'm going to help train you, and I won't take no for an answer. Katsuki thought as he waited on that garbage-filled beach for a certain green-haired boy to show up, so he could say a few choice words to his little brother. Izuku wore up early the next morning. He quietly slipped his workout clothes, socks, and bright red sneakers on before taking a deep breath in. He then turned to and picked up an old family photo he had kept framed in his room and softly smiled. The photo showed a young Inko, who was a little slimmer back then than she is now. She was delicately holding a swaddled-up Izuku in her arms when he was only around 1 1/2. On Inko's right side stood a man with black curly hair, around 7 feet tall, with gleaming yellow eyes and imposing, yet loving smile on his face. That man was Izuku's father, Hisashi Midoriya. Hisashi had 6 black horns that curved back, like a dragon's horns. He had 2 large, black wings on his shoulders. His left wing was wrapped delicately around his wife, draped on her like a black cape. And Hisashi also had a long, scaly black tail with a single row of dark gray spikes on top of it. Izuku smiled as he remembered some of the things he did with his father when he was little, like catching bugs or fishing together. He remembered the time when he and his father went on a father-son trip when Izuku was 5 years old. He remembered only little bits and pieces of what happened on that day, but he remembered the feeling of petting something that had cold, smooth, obsidian-like scales or plates. He couldn't remember what it looked like, but did know he gave it a name, as he distinctly remembered he called it Braki, yet he never knew why he chose that name. He also remembered the feeling of wind blowing through his hair as he rode on the back of something. He had chalked it up to his overactive 5-year-old imagination, yet everything had felt so real. Then, his father left. Izuku didn't know exactly why he did, but his mom had said he did so to keep his family safe. He felt a feeling of longing as he stared at the photo of his father, wishing he had gotten to know him more. Hey Dad. I know you can't hear me, but I'm doing it, Dad. I'm going to achieve my dream, and funnily enough, All Might himself is helping me out. Mom and I miss you. We miss you so much, and I just want to know what you were like. I wish I had gotten to know you more, Dad. I am going to be a hero, Dad, one that you'll be proud of. So please come back soon. Izuku whispered out to himself as a few tears fell onto the glass protecting the picture, before whipping his face with his sleeve and setting the picture back on his dresser. He turned to give the photo one last look before walking out the door and making his way to Dagobah Beach. Izuku soon arrived at the beach and saw All Might in his small form waving at him. He smiled back and ran up to the skeletal man and said excitedly yet quiet, All Might. I'm here. So what will I be doing? Well, young Midoriya, first please just call me Mr. Yagi for now. Secondly, you see this beach? I do, Mr. Yagi. Why did you choose this place of all things to train? Izuku asked. Yagi then gave out a cheery laugh and said, being a hero isn't just about facing villains and saving lives. Heroes will also do little things to help out those in need. Case in point, I want you to clean up at least half of this beach by the UA entrance exams in 10 months. Half the beach? Are you sure, Mr. Yagi? Of course, but this will also help you build up some much-needed muscle too in order for you to handle one for all. But you said I was worthy? And you still are young, Midoriya. But your body isn't ready to handle its power. If you use it the way you are now, it could tear your limbs right off. Really? Yes, now then to help you I've made you this, the All-American Dream Workout Plan. This will be the guide you live by for the next 10 months, young Midoriya. All Might then handed Izuku the workout plan and was about to say something else before someone else cut in. So you finally showed up, huh, Deku? Bakugo announced as he walked up to the two. KK Kaken? How? If you're giving out secret information, make sure that no one else is around to hear you, idiots. Bakugo said as he then looked up at the mortified All Might and said, Don't worry, I won't tell a single soul about what I heard, but if this will help Deku be a hero, then I want in too. All Might breathed out a sigh of relief and nodded at the explosive blonde before turning to Izuku and asking, So who might this be, young Midoriya? Sorry about him, All Might. That Bakugo Katsuki, he's my best friend a dash. Deku, we're more like brothers than best friends at this point. And besides nerd, don't you have training to start? Skeletor here can clue me in on everything else between you two. Skeletor? Yagi said in surprise as Izuku then nodded and went off to start hauling off trash. Bakugo then turned to All Might and said with a scowl, Start from the beginning, I want to know everything my little brother's going to get into with you and this power of yours. All Might sighed and explained everything, from one for all to how he met Izuku. Bakugo just stood there, taking in the information All Might was telling him before saying, First of all, thanks for not crushing his dreams. Secondly, I'm going to help him train and also make sure the nerd doesn't overwork himself. Thank you, young Bakugo, I'm quite glad that young Midoriya has a friend like yourself, but that's enough talk. Let's get to training. All Might said as he went into his buff form and Bakugo cracked his knuckles and had a wide grin on his face before the two blondes went over to help Izuku with his training. It is now a week and a half from the day of the entrance exams, and Izuku and Bakugo were star-gazing late at night after a tiring training session with All Might that morning. They were now almost completely done on clearing the beach of garbage, and went on for a little bit of quirk training, trying to get Izuku to get his scales to glow orange again, but with little success. But the worries from the upcoming entrance exam were pushed to the back of their minds as they gazed up at the stars. Look, Kaken, a shooting star. Izuku said as he pointed at a larger reddish-looking one that streaked across the sky. What did you wish for, nerd? Bakugo asked Izuku. The boy in question's smiling face turned into a more somber one as he then took a deep breath, gazed back at the stars as the comet disappeared, and said quietly, I wish Dad would come back soon. Bakugo looked at Izuku in understanding as he then nodded before beginning to pet the greenette's fluffy, curly hair with a fond smile on his face, causing Izuku to laugh a little before staring back at the beautiful night sky. A red fireball streaked across the midnight sky above the greenette's home. Highly evolved blue eyes surveyed the area from far above the clouds before disappearing back into the night sky with a sonic boom in its wake, unheard by the humans who lived far below the clouds. In a short while, the creature flew slightly as he then found the meeting point, diving down and landing in front of the large mouth of the cave before it. A silvery, scaly body walked into the cave, making its way through the dark tunnels before arriving in the section of cave where its leader dwelled. The proud and valiant rocket-powered elder dragon, Volstrak stepped forward into the large room and bowed. Your lordship, he said as he entered the cave and looked up at the larger dragon before it. Ah, Volstrax. I see you've returned from your nightly recon mission. So please tell me, how are my wife and son doing? A frightening, yet fatherly voice spoke out from the darkened area of the cave. They are doing fine, my lord. Though I had seen news articles of an incident your hatchling had gotten into. He is okay, but once you go back to them, I highly advise you to teach him some common sense, my lord. Volstrak said politely as the voice let out a good-natured and hearty laugh. That does seem like my boy after all, rushing into danger like that, just like his idol. Thank you for the news, my good friend. You may leave. The voice said with some nostalgia, thinking about the past. Volstrax nodded before walking off, but stopping at the entryway and asking, My lord, I hope you don't mind me asking, but if your hatchling happens to transform and lose control, or is in danger, who will you send with me to help them? Also, my lord, how is the boy's bonded monster faring? Ah, that. I suppose I should send either Ruiner or my cousin Safi to help if he happens to transform and help calm him down enough to stop fighting. As for the boy's monster, he's been fare quite well. He misses my son, as do I, but he's quite excited to see him again soon, as my metamorphosis is almost finally complete. Thank you for asking, Volstrax. The voice said calmly as Volstrax left the den of the larger dragon. The large, almost completely white dragon picked up something in its claws, a picture of a black-haired man and his green-haired wife holding their baby boy in her arms. I will be back soon, my lovely Inko. I'm so sorry this metamorphosis would take so long, but I couldn't let either of you near me with how destructive it is to harness, master, and evolve the dragon element into something more. I believe some of the patches of forest are still blackened by the outburst of volatile energy I had exuded from my body back then. But soon, really soon, I will see you again, my love. And soon, I will see the kind, heroic teenager my hatchling has grown to become. I promise this, like I had promised the ancients would burn for their sins against the dragons and nature itself so long ago. So says I, Hisashi Midoriya, the wyvern of destiny and destruction. Fatali's Hisashi, no, Fatali's thought as he looked up at the stars above through an opening in his cave roof, waiting and longing to see his family once more. Chapter 5, The U Entrance Exams. It was the day of the entrance exam, and Izuku was more determined than ever to get into his dream school. Thanks to All Might's training, and help from Kaken, Izuku bulked up a bit. He was much more muscular now, but he still had a slim build to him. But while training, the trio had figured out how durable Izuku's quirk made him. One day while they were training/cleaning the beach, Izuku was cleaning one of the bigger piles of junk on the beach, but he had accidentally removed some support-bearing pieces from the pile, causing it to become unstable. On top of that pile, someone had recently trashed a machete they didn't need, so when Izuku took that vital piece out, the pile shook and the machete came loose and fell on Izuku. Izuku let out a scream of terror as he covered his face with his forearms to protect himself, accepting the worst. Yagi and Bakugo quickly ran over to where they heard the cry of terror when they found something surprising. Izuku was perfectly fine, as he held his blocking position in surprise as he looked down at something. The two blondes followed his line of sight to see a machete sitting in the sand, the sharp side dented in by something extremely durable and tough. After Izuku explained what had happened, Yagi got an idea to test how durable Izuku's quirk made his arms, so he buffed up into All Might and pulled over a discarded fridge and told the greenette to punch it with all his might. Izuku agreed and ended up denting the metal inwards, but didn't break it. All Might nodded before asking Izuku to now do a spear hand strike instead of a normal punch, as his claws could be utilized to pierce the metal. Izuku nodded and his clawed hand pierced through the metal refrigerator door with ease. The greenette was left staring at the hole he made in the fridge door, surprised at how tough his scales actually were, as he was told his scales were either as tough as regular human skin or only slightly tougher. Izuku thought back to a couple days ago as he walked through the huge gates of UA. It was when they had completed clearing out Dagoba Beach of trash, as Izuku and Katsuki stood atop the last pile they gathered out by the truck, both letting out a roar of victory as an awestruck All Might stared at them. "Oh my goodness," All Might said as he went into his buff form and caught both tired boys as they fell off the top of the garbage pile. "Young Midoriya. Young Bakugo. This is incredible. I haven't seen this beach this spotless in a long time. Now then, young Midoriya, it's time for your reward for all your hard work," All Might said as he led both tired, yet determined teens onto the beach, as they all knew that Izuku was finally a worthy vessel for one for all. Izuku stood in front of All Might, while Bakugo stood off to the side, as All Might let out a laugh and encouragingly pat Izuku's shoulder with his trademark smile proudly on his face. "Young Midoriya, it seems that you're finally ready to obtain one for all. I see you are very excited. All Might said, cracking up a bit as he noticed Izuku's tail was wagging like a dog's would when excited, and that caused the greenette to blush and shyly look away. Now then. All Might then pulled a strand of hair from his head and held it in front of Izuku. Eat this. Once those words were said, Izuku's tail stopped wagging and Bakugo started to cackle madly in the background, clutching his chest from how hard he was laughing. What did you say, All Might? My power can only be transferred through the DNA of the users, and this is the least gross way to do it. So just eat it and get it over and done with it. Izuku ended up gagging after eating the strand of blonde hair, as Bakugo's laughing fit devolved into a coughing fit as he desperately tried to catch his breath once again. Once the hair was digested, Izuku felt a strange new power flow through him, and he woke up in the middle of that night to find the same patches of scales that glowed orange during the sludge villain incident were now glowing a vibrant shade of purple, with little arches of reddish-black lightning dance along his skin before fading out, just like the orange glow from before. Izuku then stopped reminiscing on the past, and took one step up the stairs into his dream school, only to trip and was about to fall flat on his face. He braced for the impact when he felt his body feel weightless as someone else lifted him up and set him on his feet. Izuku looked up to see a brown-haired girl with rosy pink cheeks use her quirk on him. Izuku's own freckled cheeks were now dusted pink with embarrassment as the girl muttered out the word, "release," and his weight was returned to him. Sorry about using my quirk on you, but it wouldn't be good luck to trip on the day of the entrance exam. Good luck, she said, leaving Izuku behind, blushing and with a nervous smile on his face as he took some deep breaths to calm down from the embarrassing moment. Soon after he easily completed the written exam, Present Mike was now giving all of the hero hopefuls a rundown on the U.A entrance exam. As Izuku absent-mindedly mumbled about what the best course of action would be while taking the test, a blue-haired teen stood up and pointed out something about a fourth robot before turning to Izuku and pointing at him and loudly said, "And as for you, with the black demonic horns and curly green hair, you've been mumbling the whole time while Present Mike was explaining. If you don't intend to take this entrance exam seriously, then I highly suggest that you leave at once, as that is unbecoming for a hero. Thank you for letting me speak, Present Mike." The blue-haired boy sat down as other teens snickered and giggled at Izuku being called out, but that only caused Katsuki to glare and growl at the blue-haired teen. Present Mike thanked the student for speaking up before explaining the purpose of the fourth robot, called the zero-pointer, before a resounding cry of "Plus Ultra" rang out from the crowd before they were assigned and taken to their testing sites. As Izuku waited for the physical exam to start, he saw that the nice brown-haired girl was in the same testing site as him, so he went to walk over to her and thank her for stopping his fall before he was stopped by the same blue-haired boy from earlier. "What do you think you're doing? That girl looks like she's trying to calm herself down for the exam. Are you trying to sabotage her chances? No, I. Save your lies for someone who'll actually believe them and leave her alone. If you're going to act so villainous to try and be a hero, then why should you be a hero at all?" The boy spat out venomously before leaving, as most of the other test takers either agreed with his statement. Izuku resisted the urge to cry at that moment, knowing that he'll prove that guy wrong as a surge of determination welled inside him. Then Present Mike abruptly shouted out that the exam had started, and Izuku immediately took to the skies and flew into the fray, gaining a slight head start on the other participants. Izuku tore through the nearby 1 and 2 pointers with his sharpened claws with ease, flying at their heads and tearing them to bits. But as soon as the other participants began their assault on the robots, Izuku had only a measly 13 points by the time the zero-pointer was released. The ground shook as the gigantic zero-pointer emerged from the ground trembled with each of its steps. Izuku was about to join the other participants in avoiding the huge zero-pointer when he heard a cry of pain. He turned around to see the nice girl from earlier trapped underneath some rubble. Just like in the sludge villain incident, his body moved on its own as he dived down next to the girl. Can you use your quirk? No, the rubble is past my weight limit. Izuku grit his teeth as he looked up to see the Zero-Pointer's robotic foot coming down onto both of the teens. Izuku knew what he had to do. As the scales on his body glowed purple before he rocketed himself into the air with a massive shockwave of air from his wings once he was far enough from the girl to do any unintentional harm. Izuku soared up to the face of the Zero-Pointer, as his scales then turned orange and with an imposing yet divine and monster-like roar he smashed the robot's head with a powered-up punch. A massive fireball exploded against the mechanical Titanic's head instead of a All Might-like shockwave. The front of the robot's face was instantly melted and thrown back as it collapsed on its back away from the other participants. Izuku then realized that his arm felt extremely sore, and looked down to see the top of it covered in a huge purple bruise, while his scaled forearm looked the same, but hurt just as much. It took Izuku a couple seconds to realize he was falling, but when he did he tried to flap his wings, but couldn't feel them as they had both been broken due to the power of One for All. Izuku was running out of ideas and was too close to the ground when a hand slapped him across the face and he became weightless. He looked over to see the nice girl had made him weightless, before releasing him from her quirk's grasp before promptly throwing up on the ground. 10 seconds left. Present Mike shouted out as Izuku paled and said aloud, 10 seconds. And no, I need more points. Before spotting a 2-pointer and just as he started to run towards it, Present Mike announced the time was up. Izuku just looked defeated, as he heard someone calling out any of the injured. My sonny, that's a lot of damage, here let me heal you up. An old voice said near Izuku as he looked down and saw a pair of lips kiss the top of his uninjured hand before he felt himself slip into unconsciousness when he realized it was Recovery Girl, U.A's nurse, who he had heard. Izuku then woke up in the U.A's nurse's office, and after a scolding by the old woman and an explanation from Yagi on how she knew about One for All, was he allowed to go home. Izuku then texted Katsuki and told him everything that had happened during the test before he walked into his house, hugged his mom and apologized to her for worrying her. Once he had dinner, he tired walked into his room and passed out as soon as his body touched the mattress, unsure if he made it in or not, as a familiar red comet passed overhead in the starry sky. Chapter 6, The First Day at UA. Izuku sat on the couch, lifting weights to pass the time, before his mother bursted through the door and said in a panicked voice, Izuku. Your letter from UA. It's here. With her hands trembling, she held out the small white letter to her son with tears brimming in her eyes. Izuku immediately set his weight down and rushed over to his mother, grabbed the letter from her, and thanked her with a hug before he ran into his room and shut the door. Izuku then took a deep breath before he used one of his claws to cut open the top of the letter and bring out a small gray disc with a button on top. Confused, he pressed the button, causing a screen with All Might to appear with his signature laugh. Hey All Might! Izuku exclaimed in shock, before quickly overcoming it by wondering why All Might was in the holographic recording from UA. His answer was quickly given when All Might said he was now part of UA's staff as the new heroics teacher. All Might then explained that since Izuku only gained 13 villain points, it wouldn't be enough to get into UA, which dampened his mood a bit. But then All Might made his mood do a complete 180 as he then showed Izuku a video of the nice girl asking Present Mike to give some of her points to him. Izuku was touched by the girl's action, but then was confused when the voice hero said there wouldn't be any need to do that. Then All Might said, you see young Midoriya, smashing robots aren't the only things the judges look for in the UA practical. Before the screen switched to the judges holding up numbered signs as All Might explained about the secret rescue points, and Izuku earned 60 of them for saving that girl, bringing his score up to 73, and the nice girl had earned 45 rescue points too. Izuku's eyes filled with tears as All Might explained that he passed, had gotten into Class 1A, and that he'll see him at UA. Izuku's tail was wagging with pure joy and happiness as tears streamed down his face, before he went to see his mom. She saw her teary-eyed son walk out of his room and assumed the worst. Izuku, honey, what happened? She had asked before walking over and hugging him. Mom. Aye. Izuku, it's okay if you didn't get in, you could always get into another school, I know it doesn't have to be UA but dash. Inko stopped as Izuku started to smile and laugh, before looking her in the eyes. Mom, no, it's not that. Mom, I did it. I got in. Izuku said with a bright smile on his face, before his mother had also started to cry tears of joy, as the two greenettes stood there hugging each other over Izuku's accomplishment. Once the two Midoriyas were done with the waterworks, and had a celebratory dinner of katsudon, Izuku now laid on his bed and texted Katsuki on how he did. Izuku, hey Kaken, how did you do on the UA entrance exam? Kaken, I obviously got in, you nerd. I got 74 points and got into class 1A. What about you? Izuku, I got in too. I got 73 points and I'm in 1A too. Kaken, awesome. I told you could do it, Deku. I'll see you there, nerd. Izuku, same with you, Kaken. Izuku now walked the halls of UA, side by side with Katsuki, as they searched for the 1A classroom. 1A, ha. Found it. Izuku said as the two teens stood in front of the large doorway. Neat. Hey Deku, what do you think our classmates will be like? I don't know, Kaken. I just hope the blue-haired guy isn't there. Same here, nerd, but I won't let him be rude to you either. They then walked in and saw the tall, blue-haired boy in the classroom introducing himself to a white and red-haired boy. He then saw the two boys and walked over to them, and gave Izuku a judging glare, making him subconsciously shrunk in on himself, trying to make himself feel smaller. He then walked up to Katsuki and said, hello. My name is Tenya Lita. It's nice to meet you, as he made robotic, chopping movements in the air. Katsuki Bakugo. But that's all you'll need to know about me. How rude. Is this how you'll treat your classmates? Lita said, offended, as Katsuki scoffed. Just move so me and the nerd here can get to out seats in peace. Katsuki said as he placed a hand on top of Izuku's head, making him eep cutely. Lita moved out of the way, and shot another glare at Midoriya when his back was turned. Once Izuku sat down, he heard another voice directly at him. It's you. The curly-haired boy. The girl Izuku saved exclaimed as she went up to his desk and held out a hand. My name is Ochako Uraraka. Thank you so much for saving me. Uraraka said as Izuku took her hand and shook it. My name's Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to see that you got in too. If you're going to stand there and waste time making friends, then you should leave now. Someone said as Izuku and the rest of the class looked toward the door and saw a sleeping bag sitting there. Then, the person inside opened it, revealing a black-haired, tired man inside. He folded up the bag and walked up to the front desk, took a swig of coffee and said, I am your homeroom teacher. My name's Shota Aizawa. Now. He held up a UA gym uniform and tiredly said, put these on and meet me outside in 10 minutes or there will be consequences. Izuku and the rest of the guys put on their PE clothes and met Aizawa outside on the PE grounds. He then mentioned that they would be having an application test, before calling over Bakugo to a circle he stood by and asked him what his score was on the softball throw at middle school. It was 67 meters. Bakugo said. Alright, I want you to do it again, but this time use your quirk. Bakugo got a menacing, yet excited grin on his face as he brought his arm back and yelled out, die, as he threw the ball with a massive explosion blasting it further into the sky. After a few seconds, Aizawa held up a device that measured how far the ball flew, which read out 705.2 meters. The class cheered out in both awe and excitement, until someone unfortunately said, wow, that looks like fun. Aizawa scowled at that. Fun, huh? Well then, how about this? Whoever gets into last place is immediately expelled. The class exploded in outrage, some exclaimed that it was fair as Aizawa looked at them seriously. Not fair. You won't get to say what's fair or not when fighting off bloodthirsty villains or saving people from natural disasters. You are going to become heroes, so I suggest you take this as seriously as you can." That got everyone to shut up, before they started on the 50-meter dash. Lita got the fastest time with his Quirk engine, with a time of 3.04 seconds. Then Izuku and Bakugo were up after him, and the robot at the end of the track shot of the starting pistol. Bakugo rocketed off, using his explosions to propel himself forward, as Izuku took off behind him, using his wings to soar close to the ground at his top speed. Bakugo ended up at the end first with a time of 4.13 seconds. Izuku crossed the line soon after at a time of 5.05 seconds. Next was grip strength, but before they started Izuku got approached by Katsuki, who whispered to him, "Why are you using your Quirk? It hurts me when I use it." "Well, how much power are you putting behind your punches when you do use it?" 100%. "Well, there's your reason, Deku. You're not going to be ready for 100% power for a while. Have you tried lowering the percentage?" "And no." "Then try it. What else do you do when using it?" "I put it into one section of my body." "Deku, no. Does All Might buff up one part of his body when using it?" "And no. He spreads it through his whole body." "Oh. I get it, thanks for the advice, Kaken," Izuku said with a bright smile before jumping up to hug the taller boy. The blonde grinned and said, "Any time, nerd. God, for someone so smart, you can be pretty dumb sometimes." "Hey, Kaken, that's not nice," Izuku said before he was called up to do the trip strength test along with a large, six-armed boy. Izuku took a deep breath and called upon One for All, his scales glowing purple before black lightning danced across his body as he spread the power throughout his body and lowered the percentage he used down from 100% to a measly 1%. Izuku then gripped the machine with all his might, earning him a score of 135.9 kilograms. Izuku smiled to himself before he heard someone shout out, "Whoa! 540 kilograms. What are you, a gorilla?" Izuku looked over at the other multi-armed boy with his other classmates crowding him as he gripped the machine with all 6 of his arms. Next was the standing long jump, where Aizawa didn't even have Izuku test as he knew with his wings, he would clear the sandbox with ease. Next was repeated side steps, where a purple-haired boy bounced in between 2 purple balls on the space to get the highest score, even though Izuku wasn't a slouch either, using his Quirk to increase his speed slightly, earning a higher score than most. Finally, Izuku was called up for the ball throw. He saw Uraraka's score of infinity with awe, before he was called up to the circle by Aizawa-sensei. Izuku took a deep breath before bringing his arm back, activating his Quirk, and throwing the ball, which only went 56 meters. It felt like his Quirk was shut off when he heard something. "You weren't planning on destroying your arm again, weren't you, Midoriya?" Izuku turned around in shock and saw Aizawa-sensei, his hair floating up and his eyes glowing red as he stared at him. Izuku's eyes lit up in realization as he said, "Why, you're the underground pro hero Eraserhead. You erased my Quirk." "Well deduced, Midoriya. I'm a little shocked, you know me, since I do my best to stay away from the media and public eye. But if you're going to cripple yourself with your Quirk, you're going to be a liability on the field. If you don't improve, then I'm going to expel you right here. Now then, if you can use your Quirk without breaking your entire arm like last time, then you could stay," Aizawa said seriously as he deactivated his Quirk and handed Izuku the ball. Izuku nodded at his teacher before he was handed the ball. He then gave a determined look as he brought his arm back again and threw the ball, and as the ball left his hand, he activated One for All in his index finger, and launched the ball into the sky with a powerful shockwave of air. He then turned around to Aizawa, clenching his now injured finger, and gave him a shaky yet determined smile and said, "Sensei, I'm still standing." "This kid," Aizawa thought as he gave a proud smile behind his capture scarf before holding up the recording device, showing Izuku's score as 705.4. Bakugo smirked and yelled out, "Yeah." Deku, in support as Uraraka, also cheered in support, while Lita shook his head disapprovingly. Why are they cheering for that villain? He'll show his true colors soon enough, and when he does, I'll be there to stop him, like a true hero. Aizawa then showed everyone their scores, and Izuku got 10th. A girl named Gave Toru Hagakure got last, when Aizawa said that the expulsion threat was a ruse, causing everyone to be in shock. A black-haired girl, Momo Yaoyorozu, calmly said that it was obvious. Aizawa gave Izuku a slip to go to Recovery Girl afterwards and told him to go once class was over. Once he was healed, the school ended, and he and Katsuki were walking home when they heard someone call out to them. "Hey Midoriya-kun. Wait up." Uraraka ran up beside the two boys with a smile on their face. "Hey Deku, who's this?" Bakugo asked. "Oh, are you Midoriya-kun's friend? I'm Ochako Uraraka. Nice to meet you," Uraraka said with a bow. The name's Bakugo Katsuki, round cheeks. "So how'd you meet my little brother?" Bakugo said with a smirk as Izuku pouted a little and glared at him, mumbling that Bakugo was only a few months older than him. "Our round cheeks?" Uraraka said in confusion before getting back on topic and telling Bakugo about what Izuku did in the entrance exam. Bakugo then glared at the greenette before punching him in the arm. "Ow! Kaken, what was that for?" Izuku exclaimed. "For breaking your wings and arm, Deku. Now let's get home," Bakugo exclaimed, making Uraraka giggled at the two's brotherly bickering, as the trio nodded and headed to their homes, excited for what their next day at U.A will bring. Chapter 7, A Shocking Heroics Class. It was the second day of UA and all of Class 1A were extremely excited for their first heroics class. Izuku heard footsteps leading up to their classroom door and someone talking. "I am." He heard before the door swung open, revealing All Might in his Silver Age costume. Coming through the door like a normal person. All Might said, doing the exact opposite of what he said, as most of the class looked at the number one hero in awe and excitement. All Might then walked up to the stand before explaining that yes, he was going to be teaching at UA, before he flipped over a card revealing what their first lesson was going to be. The little card had the words, "Battle Training," written boldly on the front, and the class couldn't be more exciting, making Izuku's tail wag unconsciously. Bakugo and Uraraka noticed Izuku's tail, causing them to laugh to themselves a little, and it was noticed by Ojiro as well, who was also trying to stop his tail from doing the exact same thing. All Might then said in his loud and cheerful voice, "You will also be needing these," before pressing a button revealing their hero costumes on the wall closest to the door. All Might then said to get changed and meet him at Ground B before he rushed out of the classroom, leaving the excited students to grab their gear and go get changed. Izuku looked at his gear with a smile, as he couldn't believe that the support class approved of his request on his costume's hood. He quickly got changed and stepped out to the rest of the class. Izuku's costume wasn't that fancy, but was comfortable to wear and eye-catching. He wore a green t-shirt, his standard bright red sneakers, and black sweatpants. The tee was short enough to show off his heavily scaled forearms. He kept his wings and tail without any add-ons, but he had a hood on his green t-shirt. The hood went up and over his head, and with the metal mouth guard on the bottom, combined into a mask. His horns slipped into two holes in his hood, and on his scaled hands he had green fingerless gloves on. But the most important detail was what was on his hood. On the top, two green rabbit ears that were supposed to be in homage to All Might's hair, but there was something else on his hood too located where his ears were. Several black horns were located where his ears were, like where Bakugo's explosion-patterned fins on either side of his head. These horns were a tribute to his dad, as they looked exactly like the ones he had, and he couldn't be more thankful to who made it. "Wow! You look so cool, Midoriya-kun," Uraraka said. "Thank you, Uraraka. Your costume looks cool too." I like the space theme. Uraraka thanked him as they joined the group that crowded around All Might asking questions about what they would be doing. All Might answers their questions before going over what they would be doing, which was splitting up into teams of heroes and villains to defend/retrieve a papier-mâché bomb that would detonate in 10 minutes if it wasn't obtained in that time. All Might then said that they would be deciding teams by drawing lots. Ida then asked why they would be drawing lots for this exercise. Izuku then raised his hand and answered, since when we are in hero work, we don't get to choose who we work alongside, right All Might? All Might then nodded, confirming Izuku's answer. Soon the class drew lots, and Izuku got in Team A and was paired up with a boy with red and white hair named Shoto Todoroki. All Might then called out that he and Todoroki would be up first as villains against the hero team of Kaminari Denki and Tenya Ida. Once the rest of the class was in the observation area, All Might gave the villains 1 minute and 30 seconds to plan before the exercise started. Hey, it's nice to meet you Todoroki-kun. My name's Izuku Midoriya. Izuku said as he reached out to give the frozen-over boy a handshake, who hesitantly accepted. It's nice to meet you Midoriya. Todoroki responded, keeping his voice monotone. So may I ask what your quirk is so we can form a strategy? My quirk is called half cold half hot. I can create ice with my right side and fire with my left. What is yours? My quirk is called Black Dragon. It basically gives me these super tough black scales on my forearms, along with my horns, wings, and tail. It also gives me a strength enhancer, but if I use too much I could damage myself. But I'm still finding out new things about my quirk. What do you mean? Well, I am now technically capable of using fire, but I don't know how to activate it normally. And I didn't even always have that ability, as it only started happening after engulfed by a fiery explosion. Todoroki started at the boy in disbelief before he face-palmed and sighed, before Izuku started to speak once again. I wasn't harmed by it. But the strange thing that happened was that it caused my scales to glow orange, and then when I was saving someone from the 0-pointer in the entrance exam, it happened again. So it was you who completely trashed and melted the head off one of the 0-pointers at the entrance exam. Todoroki interrupted, to which Izuku blushed and nodded shyly before Todoroki allowed the greenette to continue talking. But I don't know. Ever since that happened, I've felt like I might be able to use other elements, kind of like you can control both ice and fire, right? If that is what your quirk's name suggests is the case. And I feel like I could be right, as I have felt a strange feeling ever since I've been around you and all of your ice. So, can you do me a favor? Izuku asked. Okay then. Sure, what is it Midoriya? Todoroki said, unsure of what the green-haired boy was planning. Izuku then took a deep breath in and said with a completely serious face, use your ice on me Todoroki. Todoroki looked both shocked and bewildered for a few seconds before he chuckled and his face returned to its usual monotone expression. Midoriya, I've only met you a little bit ago, and yet I can already tell you're going to be giving me, and presumably the rest of our class, a couple of migraines in the future. He said before he granted Izuku's wish, and encased the greenette in his ice, but left the boy's head exposed. Izuku closed his eyes and felt his body change, as he felt sort of cozy in his chilly cocoon. After a few seconds, he opened them again to see Todoroki had a calm yet intrigued look on his face as he stared at Izuku. Izuku followed the heterochromatic teen's line of sight to see that through the ice, his scales now glowed a calm light blue. Izuku beamed before looking back at Todoroki and saying, I think it worked. Thank you Todoroki-kun. No problem Midoriya. Also might I ask, why aren't you shivering? I mean you're encased in a block of ice. I don't know. I don't even feel cold. Oh. That reminds me. Todoroki, what do you do to activate your fire or ice? Do you think warm or cold thoughts or is it natural? For me it's more of a natural feeling. But let's get you out of there now, as our exercise is about to start. I could try to teach you how to activate your powers another time if you would like. Todoroki said as he held his left hand up to the frozen Midoriya and melted the ice encasing the boy. Izuku then stretched and thanked Todoroki for his offer before they then heard All Might say that the heroes were now allowed to enter the building. Izuku then asked if Todoroki could freeze the room solid and create ice walls in the corners of the room to hide the bomb from view. Todoroki nodded and froze over the floor they stood in, as well as making fake walls to further stop the heroes from finding the bomb in the labyrinth of ice. Izuku then said they should stick together and look for the heroes. Todoroki nodded as the two descended down to the next floor, where they saw Ida and Kaminari walk up the stairs. All four students immediately got into fighting stances as soon as they spotted one another. "Stand down, you villains. Your nefarious deeds end here and now," Ida said with a determined look in his eyes, ready to win. "I will not lose here. I have to be careful around them both, as their quirks are strong. That kid with the dragon-like quirk reminds me too much of the villain that severely injured Tensei and almost ended his career as a hero. That villain had to be taken out by Endeavor, he was so strong. I can't take any chances with him. I can't bear to see anyone else hurt as bad as Tensei was back then. Especially since that dragon villain had hurt him after gaining his trust, as they were once one of his most trusted sidekicks going by the name of Shara. How dare they manipulate and toy with my brother's trust like that? I can't. I won't take any chances with him. It may not seem like the right course of action, but I won't let anyone else be hurt like Tensei was." Ida thought to himself as he readied his engines, and Kaminari crackled a little with electricity. Todoroki then made the first move, sending out ice to trap both boys' feet, but the attack was dodged by the hero team. Ida then activated his engines and ran at Todoroki, before swerving to face Midoriya and kicking the greenette into a wall. Midoriya was too slow to react to the sudden change of targets and was sent into the wall, cratering against it and letting out a pained grunt before falling to the ground. Ida then took out his capture tape and ran to detain Midoriya before he was cut off by a sizable wall of ice from Todoroki. Izuku got up quickly and saw that Todoroki was too busy fending off Ida to notice Kaminari was behind him, readying a big attack. Izuku then activated One for All. The black and red lightning crackled around his body as he quickly shot towards Todoroki's position. "Take this. Indiscriminate shock. 1,300,000 volts." Kaminari shouted as Ida retreated a fair distance away to avoid the attack. Todoroki turned around and his eyes widened in fear and surprise as Kaminari was too close to him to put up an ice wall to stop the lightning from hitting him. The heterochromatic boy braced for the impact when he heard someone call out and grab onto him. "Todoroki!" Izuku shouted as he jumped in front of Todoroki, still crackling with his red and black lightning, as he threw the dual-quirked boy out of the range and took the full force of the attack. Izuku screamed out in pain as he felt the lightning course through his body, but then the pain stopped even though Kaminari's attack wasn't finished. Izuku felt a fuzzy, static feeling building along his forearms and inside and between his horns, as he noticed that the feeling was similar to when you rub a balloon in your hair to build up static electricity. Kaminari's attack had stirred up a cloud of dust that covered Izuku, as the three waited for it to settle before they would resume the exercise just in case Midoriya was too injured to continue. Todoroki worried that the greenette would be seriously injured for saving him, while Kaminari and Ida were worried that the attack was too much. The dust then settled and the hero team looked surprised and shocked, as relief filled Todoroki's usually stoic face. Izuku was okay, but he was on his hands and knees panting heavily as blue streaks of lightning danced along his forearms and crackled between his horns. Izuku got up, staggering a little as he did so, with a serious look on his face. Izuku then smiled before his scales glowed purple, and the streaks of red and black lightning joined the flickering streaks of blue as he got back into a fighting stance and looked back at Todoroki. "I think it's about time we finished this, Todoroki-kun," Izuku said, as Todoroki gave the boy a small smile before standing beside him. "The fighting ends here." Todoroki stoically said before he quickly froze Kaminari in a block of ice, and Izuku swiftly ran up to Ida. Izuku then punched the speedster's armored chest plate, as Ida was unable to block the strike in time and recoiled, as the electricity traveling up and down Izuku's arms had transferred to Ida, shocking him and causing him to stagger. Not taking any more chances, Izuku swiftly wrapped his capture tape around the staggered Ida and ended the fight. Ida and Kaminari have been captured. Villain team wins. All Might announced into the loudspeaker. Soon, the two heroes were freed from their bindings and soon met up with the rest of the class in the observation room. Izuku then held out a high five to Todoroki, wanting to celebrate their victory. Todoroki just stared at Midoriya confused before he asked shyly, What are you doing, Midoriya? Izuku now looked equally confused, as did the rest of the class who overheard their conversation. I'm giving you a high five. Do you not know what a high five is? Izuku said the last part jokingly, but instantly regretted it as the heterochromatic boy started to blush and look away embarrassed. I was homeschooled by my father and I never knew anyone else my age. Sorry, I don't know about this. Todoroki said awkwardly, which made Izuku paled and feel horrible about himself as he frantically apologized to Todoroki, which made the rest of the class giggle at the greenette's antics. Then Kaminari stepped up to the two and high-fived Midoriya. A quiet, "Oh," came from Todoroki as Denki laughed out, "Sorry Midoriya, I couldn't just leave you hanging." Izuku snickered at Kaminari's actions as he lowered his hand. Soon after Ida was named the MVP of the match by Momo, everyone else went and finished the exercise. Now Class 1A was fully changed into their regular uniforms as they walked out to go home. Izuku saw Todoroki walking alone and excused himself from his usual group of Bakugo and Uraraka. Izuku walked over to the sacred boy and tapped his shoulder. Todoroki jumped a little before turning around and relaxing. "Oh, it's only you, Midoriya." "Yup, you looked pretty lonely, Todoroki-kun. Do you want to hang out with me and my friends on our way home? Would they be okay with me being there? I don't want to intrude." "Of course not. Kaken might be a little grumpy at first, but he'll warm up to you. And you look like you needed a friend, Todoroki-kun." "A friend, huh? I've never had one before," Todoroki said shyly. Izuku then looked the heterochromatic boy in the eyes and smiled brightly and said, "Then I'd gladly be your first friend, Todoroki-kun." "Thanks Midoriya, and please call me Shoto. I don't really like being called by my last name all the time," Todoroki said calmly as Izuku nodded. "Of course Shoto. Now come on, I've gotta introduce you to my friends," Izuku said before he took the taller boy by the hand and led him over to the group before heading home. Meanwhile, in a dusty old bar, a misty person was behind the counter as a pale, creepy man laughed. The man was staring at a picture of All Might before he promptly turned it into dust. "So, I wonder what everyone would think if we went on this quest." The man smiled creepily. "And killed the symbol of peace? Well, that's it for today, folks. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you like this story. See you all next time.